It's like 3 a.m. It's like 3 a.m. Everyone's asleep. And I'm deciding to make a YouTube video. So I'm going to be very monotone in this video. But I was editing this photo and I thought I might as well show you what I'm doing, because I always do this. And I've even had clients ask me for this specific style. They call it the futuristic style, because I always do it. And I can make my photos look like this and this on various different buildings, different cars, different plants like I've shown you, and make them look futuristic. And it's quite easy. First thing I want you to understand is this light. This looks futuristic as opposed to this. This doesn't look futuristic. This looks dark, gloomy, shadows. When you think of futuristic and when you want that fresh style, like I've shown you, you need those fresh, clean, cold colours that are going to make you think of like ice and really white cities. That's what we're looking for. So we've got a lovely picture here from the photo walk that we did. Shout out to everyone that came to the photo walk. Canary Wharf, really futuristic style sea anyway. Looks really cool. And we are going to turn this from this dull image into this nice, fresh image like you saw in the thumbnail. First things first, really easy. You're just going to grab that temperature and you're going to slightly move it over. I'm mainly going to be editing for these buildings. I don't care about the sky, it's too far gone. So let's boost the contrast slightly, because we're going to add we're going to take away a lot of colour. So we need to at least have some contrast in there. So we're going to boost that up. We're going to bring the highlights down, looking at the top to see these buildings. Go about there, don't want to go too crazy. And then we're going to lift up the shadows all the way. I always do this for this style, and then I edit round the shadows to keep them at their fullest, because it just looks so much cooler and fresher when you can see, like, look at that, that's all right. But when you can see all of that, like all of those little lines on there, that looks a lot cooler. We also going to get the whites like we spoke about earlier. We're going to boost them up even more, and then we're going to bring the blacks down to at least bring some texture back into it, because otherwise it just keeps going and going and going. And then talking about texture, good segue from me, we're going to boost the texture. It's really hard to speak quietly. We're going to boost the texture and then pull back the clarity. So like boost it and then look at the clarity. It makes it really soft. But obviously if we do texture and clarity, well, that looks stupid. So if you do both and do one the other way, you can still keep that soft, futuristic vibe while also adding texture. So that's what I do. I do a little back and forth. So more texture, less clarity, gives you that half and half. We're going to dehaze it to get rid of that haze. And then we're going to also boost the saturation and boost the vibrance. Nothing too crazy, just like your basic kind of edit, but just make sure you prioritise. I don't know why I'm holding this. Make sure you prioritise lifting up the shadows, alright? That's going to give you that. Well, this already looks way better. Do you know what I mean? That looks way better than what we started with already. So from there, we're going into the tone curve. I never really do this one because I've already kind of done that up here. Do you know what I mean? Because there's no colour here. This is just exposure. Well, I've already done that, so why would I do it again? So I'm not doing that. Get rid of that one. We're just going to go find the colours that we want. So this is what we want, because it's the same as this light I've got here, but it's a little bit more green. And when you do blue and green together, it makes this cool in-between colour, which you're seeing right there, but that's too much. So about there. That's the good thing about the tone curve. It is really fine-tuning the colour in there. We're even going to bring a bit of red in the shadows to get a bit of colour back in there, otherwise it's all going to be blue. So we'll go about there. And then I'm also going to do the same. Oh, okay, yeah. Bit of green. And then a little bit of purple mixed together. And then a little bit of blue. Because we don't want orange, really. Orange can piss off. Go about there. So we've merged all those colours together. And we've got this nice blue, greeny sort of tint. But then we've also got a hint of magenta in there, because obviously otherwise it would be all blue. So from there we go. I don't know why I decided to do this at like 3 a.m. I need to start going to bed earlier. So from here we can start to play around with the colours. I always do this one bit at a time. So I always start here, which is where you can decide how the colour looks. So we're going to go to the blues and the greens. I'm going to look at the buildings and they're actually fine. Don't need to do that one. Let's try this one. They're fine. Don't need to do that. Try this one. Okay, here we go. I'm actually going to add a little bit more darker into it, just because that's too much. So we're going to go the opposite way. And then we're going to get the other colours, and we're actually going to desaturate them. Even the blue. Let's desaturate all of them. Oh, actually, no. Keep the blues where they are. Wait, no. Boost the rest of the colours. And then desaturate the blues slightly, because the blues are the main colours already from all the tone curves. So now we want to just push the other colours that we haven't really touched a little bit, and then pull back the colours that we've already played with. Otherwise, again, you're just stacking on the same colour, and you don't want to do that. You always want to counter something with what you're doing. From there, colour grading. This is actually one of my favourite sections of... I think someone just messaged me to shut up. No, we're all good. We're all good. Midtones is where it's going to change the majority of the photo. I don't actually know what midtones are, but it just tends to adjust all the colours. So we're going to look for a nice... What the aim is for the midtones is to get away from that blue, because we can do that with the shadows and the highlights in a second. So we need to pick a colour that's going to be complete opposite, which at the minute is looking like that magenta style. So I think I'm going to go down here to the purples. Yeah, let's go there. Because then we can come into the shadows, and this is where we can keep it nice and blue and fresh. So I'm going to go to the green up here, about there. Highlights. We're not going to touch. We'll leave the highlights. From there, we're going to go down to the camera calibration, and we're going to bring some of that back. This is basically where we just decide what the camera sees. We can basically make the camera colorblind, and it can see green as yellow. So I am currently looking at this building. I'm using that as a reference. And I'm going to go more there. Now I'm looking at the glass. That's too much, obviously. So I like to go too much, and then I like to slowly bring it back. So I'm going to say that, and I'm going to desaturate that slightly. So that's kind of the base before and after. So this was the original. This is where we're currently at. Not too bad, but it's still a bit too much one way. Do you know what I mean? It's still just too much blue. So what we can now do is we can come up to the contrast, we can add a little bit more, and then we can almost pull down the exposure a little bit, which is going to bring it all together slightly. And then now we're going to come into the gradients. This is where it's really going to give you that, instead of that washed look over the whole thing, which we are going for, we're going for that fresh, blown out highlights. It is nice to add a little bit of shadows in there, but not just across the whole image. We want to direct them. So what I'm going to do, because this is the brightest point, so I'm going to say the shadow is going to be opposite here. We're going to pull that right up, and then I just found out that you can actually make the gradient more harsh. I didn't realise that because I'm an idiot. So we're going to do that, and we're just going to add a bit of exposure, and mainly the shadows, to about there, and then we're going to desaturate that slightly. Bosh. And then we're going to do the same with the top, because we've already got that blown out haze coming in, so we're actually going to up the haze even more. So we're going to shadows up, highlights up even more. Where's the dehaze? Where's the dehaze? There it is. See that haze coming across that building? Bosh. No haze, haze. No haze, whoa. Haze. Just makes it look like you're going into heaven, and there's a nice smoky, scenic bit above. So we're going to go about there. And then from there, we're going to come back to the temperature. Now I've dialed in all the colours, I can slightly play around with this to come to a place that I'm happy with. And I think I'm happy there. I might even boost the highlights up a little bit more on the buildings at the top. And I'll just go through the image once more and just quickly change anything that I want to. I might even bring the saturation back down. I might lift that up a little bit there. And then I might... No, yeah, I think... Yeah, I know, I'm happy with that. I think if I touch it too much more, it's going to go too crazy. So let's just quickly look at the before and after. I don't know why my before and after has now gone up here. I used to be able to do it, but here's the dull before, and then here's that bright. Like, you can see the difference in the buildings. Look at the grey, buildings. Look at the nice blue buildings. Look at the... No, the sky's the same. But you see what I mean. It's got that nice futuristic white, blue, fresh colours to them. That's kind of the general gist. But the main thing that you need to take away is definitely shadows all the way up, and definitely colder photos, and then definitely go for those blown out highlights. Like even if it's like that picture of the table, the highlights are blown out and it looks sick. And then bring up the whites as well. Those are the main three things you're going to do to each photo. And then all the stuff I've just done there is just because it's the type of photo and the type of colour that was in the photo originally. So depending on what you're editing, you obviously need to do the colours differently. But the main things is the shadows, the whites, blown out highlights, and a colder temperature is going to give you that nice futuristic look to your photos. All right, I should go to bed. You should subscribe. And I'll see you later.